The pride at historically black colleges and universities like Texas Southern is palpable. But while pride attracts students, the lack of funding doesn't.
I owe over $60,000 in debt already.
Debt is just as much an issue here as any college campus. Yet just weeks into his first term, the president hosted HBCU leaders in the Oval Office, saying the schools would be a priority from the get-go.
Historically, black colleges and universities are incredibly important institutions.
And Tuesday, the president renewed his commitment to the cause.
Together, we will ensure that HBCUs continue to thrive and prosper and flourish for the countless generations to come.
But on the ground, students like Tyler Smith say almost 3 years later, they're still struggling.
Once he took that meeting with HBCU presidents, I kind of found hope. Maybe said he's trying to make sure he does something great, but today I have seen no outcome of that meeting or that whatever he signed that day.
The White House says over the last few years, they've made more strides than any other administration, including increasing funding by double digits and relieving debt, some $330 million from schools impacted by Hurricane Katrina. In fact, HBCUs have fared far better in the president's budgets than other groups funded by the Department of Education, which has made sweeping cuts across the board.
We did drastic cuts around the federal government to kind of trim the fat and focus on our priorities, and HBCUs is one of them.
HBCU grads have gone on to extremely successful careers. 75% of black doctors are HBCU grads, 75% of black officers in the military come from HBCUs, and 80% of black federal judges attended a historically black college or university. In some cases, though, the 2019 House and Senate committees approved more funding for HBCUs than the president originally budgeted. The president's 2020 budget calls for funding of HBCUs at the same levels as 2019. And while there have been increases directly to the schools, other educational cuts indirectly impact HBCU students. The White House's 2019 budget included scaling back work-study funding and eliminating federal supplemental educational opportunity grants. 90% of HBCU students utilize those grants. The administration also requested a $1.8 billion cut to Pell Grants. HBCU students are the largest recipients of those federal dollars.
So with Pell Grant, that had been overfunded, and a lot of the funding for Pell Grant goes year to year and is not used. And so when you talk about cutting, it's talking about the extra amount that's available.
HBCU grad and special assistant to the president, Jaron Smith, says the administration is working smarter in other ways by reinstating year-round Pell Grants. Students taking summer classes had previously not been able to utilize the grant during that time. Tyler, who spends $37,000 annually on school, says that's not enough.
This one small step is something that, quite frankly, is not just going to cut it. I know for me particularly, my Pell Grant is still small, and I'm not feeling any of it. I get about $1,000 for the entire year in Pell Grant.
But for Tyler, it's not just about the tuition. He says he wants to see the school's facilities and course materials on par with other universities to help him be competitive as he applies for his first job.
Attending HBCU, sometimes we're looked down upon, and when it comes into the job field, it's very frankly that we won't get those positions if we're going up against another student from a different university.
Smith says the White House is focused on helping the universities prepare students through partnerships rather than continue to rely on funding.
We see that as not sustainable.
But Tyler says federal funding is vital, and as the 2020 Democratic candidates debate at his school, Tyler is hoping those running to replace the president agree.